Okay, so the conjunction is the beginning of the cycle, and every planet starts in conjunction with its own position. So it's the first relationship is the planet to itself. So Saturn to itself, it starts at birth. Then it goes forward or backward. It might go forward, it might go back and forth over the starting point. There might be delays or complications at the beginning. Then it gets up to the second one, age 7. Then it gets the opposition around 14, 15, and then it comes back at 21, and then back to 29, 30, and then it goes around again. So we narrowed the aspects down. We're looking, you can see these, it's just phases going from one phase to the next phase, these 7-year phases. And the aspects are just the turning points. But at turning points, we've narrowed it down. Like if you take 7 degrees aspects, you're going to have long times of these phases, and they're there, but they're not going to be critical there. So because we use the 1 degree aspect, it really sharpens and puts the most intense time when these things are dynamically happening and affecting us. You know, and they're seeable, they're relatable. You don't always understand, but you can feel them, you can sense them, you can do it when they're happening. And when you're going back thinking about what happened, they stand out. So we've cut it down to 1 degree aspects, 1 degree orb, 1 degree before, 1 degree after. So 2 degree span at the 4 angles, conjunctions, squares, oppositions, squares. So difference between a waxing square and a waning square, these things. We learn a lot through these. At each stage we're learning more about astrology. So, and we're assimilating things differently. So we went from here, and this was just the cycle of the 4 and how we put it down, and you see it makes a cycle going around like a sine curve or a graph. And we spread this out so we have it running down a page so we can see the these conjunctions, squares, oppositions coming down a page, and we can get 90 years on a page. So we can see our life on a page, or accomplishments on a page. It's like your cosmic resume or bio. Okay. Now, but accomplishment, work, achievement, respect, honor is different things at different ages. So this is the one I want to get to that we're going to work with most. Okay. This over here for now. Oh, I want to see it. Okay, pull it this way, and I'll pull this over this way. There we go. Okay. It's a bit of a challenge to do this because this is really interactive. You have to be working with your chart as we're going through this. So hopefully you got it there and you can work with it. You can start to see it. And so we're born. When we're born, everybody's born has different levels of health, different levels of strength of bones, comfort, ease, secure situations, insecure situations, parents that are together, not together. That's all kind of circumstance that we're born. That's our basic structure, at the moment we're born, this is it. That's the dad, that's the responsibility, this is what I got. We're not clued into it, we're just trying to breathe. And it's enough to feel the sensitivity of our skin. Saturn rules the bones and the skin. Our skin is just coming out from inside our mother to feeling cold, hot, wet, dry, and reacting to the elements. So if there's sometimes you're conjuncting and it just starts from there and Saturn goes direct, it goes straight forward. There's no retrograde. When it retrogrades, it doesn't come back to within the degree of the conjunction. You know, so mine started and went forward and came back and went back over it again. So people younger than me had their Saturn return before me, or some did anyways. But when that happens, there's complications around your birth. There's difficulties there. It can be with parents not being that together, you know, and having to struggle with where are we going to live, what we're going to pay for, what we're going to do, having to take care of the kid, having to do things, and I was the first kid, and I was a shock to my parents. So like suddenly they were in their relationship, they had to get married, they had to find a place to do it, and had to deal with commitments they hadn't planned on. So there was struggles there from the beginning. And so it went through certain ways. We live in an apartment for the first 6 months or something. Then I think they moved. They found this is the end of the war, so I think they found some military-assisted houses for vets or housings for vets. So they found a place east end of Montreal, and they moved there, and somewhere along. And that was, but the big thing for me was that I went along fine. I was being nursed. My mother nursed me, and that was normal things. But when she tried to get off the nursing, they couldn't find a formula that would work for me. Every formula would make me sick. I had a lactate intolerance that nobody knew about back then. So they went through about 3 to 6 months of having a struggle after. So I was nursed for about 6 or 7 months. Then they're trying to find, and for 6 or 7 months, the next 6 or 7 months, I kept vomiting, being sick, not being able to digest the food, or digest the milk. Until after about 5 or 6 months, they found a soy-based milk. Back in the 50s, that wasn't that common, but they found a soy-based milk, and I was able to make I made the adjustment. So I had some physical stress during that time. But what's responsible? What's Saturn then? It's what parents are doing. It's whether they know what to do, what's happening. There's problems there to solve. There's always problems there to solve. How the mechanics of it are being done. This is part of the Saturn. It's not a conscious thing for the baby coming in. You're coming into a matrix of energy. And the magic of life is that you breathe, that you like, geez, when you have your little baby, you're holding your baby, you don't want to let it down. You think if you let it, you don't want it, you're holding this life, and then you don't want to even let it down, because if you put it down and you fall asleep, maybe it would die, and then sooner or later you crash or fall asleep and the baby still lives. It's a miracle. Things happen. How we experience these things, how mom and dad experiences, whether together or not together, all the other patterns, the moon phases come in, the monthly cycles come in, the Mercury cycles of 3 months come in, the Venus cycles of 7 months come in, the sun cycles of a year come in. All of these start developing within this phase, but it starts from this anchor of having our body and our skin. Okay, so rashes, things that affect the skin, things that affect the bones, these are all basic Saturnian problems. So things change very fast in a little baby's life. They can look like they're healthy one moment, look like they're dying the next second. It's just, what do you do? Okay, so it's the basic work of being alive and getting there. We just instinctively grow. But when Saturn goes, so this next 7 years really is an instinctive development. We don't plan to grow up. We don't plan to stand up. We don't plan to crawl. We don't plan to stand up. We don't plan to walk. We don't know at what age, at what time we're crawling or walking or standing up or talking or moving. Like we certainly know if someone's sick, if they're not being adequately fed or not being, if mom's milk isn't adequate or there isn't adequate food, you can see the child's development being hampered. So like this instinctive phase of development from 0 to 7, but this early stage when Saturn goes backwards and forwards, there's some delays, some complications. I wasn't colicky, but colicky could be one of the things that could come in. Some difficulties. Difficulties can be physical. They can be between parents. They can be in circumstances around one. But when it's not an insignificant thing that Saturn goes back, it goes forward, it retrogrades back, comes back over Saturn, and comes again after you're born. Okay, so that first hit, you want to look at, and then you got to ask mom or anybody who knew, how was your health, what was happening? You got to find a baby book that maybe put in little statements in it or whatever, and you start to develop these roots. These roots are very primal things, because every time 30 years later when Saturn comes around and you're defining your structure again, those similar patterns were happening. It's associated to this, how you came in and began with. So, yeah, we we slowly become the matrix. It takes the Mercury cycle 3 months before you can even look around or thinking. And then we just go through the stages of development. We add the emotions and what we like or what we don't like, what we want or don't want. You know, we want the dessert. We don't want we don't want the meat dishes. We want the desserts and or whatever, and the baby food. And it goes on. We're trying to grow. We're trying to do things. Still, our parents are having it. We're baby. We're being bundled up when you're in that first year. If you're crying, if you're mad, you just have to wrap the baby up well, and it seems like it's in the womb, and it falls asleep. Fairly easy to take to calm down that way. But as you get older, as energy's there and you're able to move around, walk, you can move around, you can hurt things. You have to kid safe your place. You have to be careful around corners of tables or just anything that can fall right. Like that's why I call it the terrible twos. By the time the kid can stand up and walk around or run around, well, usually that's maybe closer to 1, but then by 2, they can climb out of the crib. You can't control it. They're moving around. They're after things. They're going in for things, and then it's harder to control them. So there's a drive to just get life and to experience, to do one more step, to crawl a little bit more, to get something off that countertop, to push, to crawl across the room to get a cookie, or to crawl here, or to try and get into something. It's a normal instinct. We all have that. We don't always have conducive environments that support that. Sometimes we come in karmically with parents that are not ready or are fighting it. Some parents are learning at the same time, you know. But your chart, the situation in your chart, it's your character, it's your archetype, but it's also the social circumstances around you at the time of birth. So the aspects of things in your chart are really just your parents, the family around you, their attitudes, their circumstances, how they're dealing with things, if they're there, if they're not there. These are all primary things that anchor into your Saturn, that are part of you. They're where you're coming from. I'm born, you're separated from the womb, and you have to start building up things yourself. And it comes in days and in waves and building this up. So it's a struggle. There's no simple way around this. Sorry, I'm just having to adjust something. I can see the time. Yeah, okay. So you can break down these phases. Like it's about a 7-year cycle. It's 3.5 years. You're halfway through it. So the first 3.5, you know, you're growing up, and maybe by 3 or 3.5, you're finished with diapers. Wow. Imagine that. So there's a lot of training or discipline required just in having to maybe take care of basic stuff. Eating, pooing, cleaning. And the minute you don't do anything, there's skin rashes, there's problems going on. So you have to take care of these things. So this is a Saturn effort of parents and you growing up inside those efforts. And then so you're potty trained, you get rid of the diaper, and then, wow, you start doing, it's a different level, different understanding, a new outlet, different things you can do. This is partly the Jupiter, you know, this is a little more than a Jupiter cycle, but halfway, 3.5, that's a half a Jupiter cycle. So a new understanding kicks in inside of this. But still, it's really instinctive. You're trying to do whatever you can do. You're going to run if you can run. You can throw things if you can throw things. You're going to, if you get more attention for screaming, you'll scream. Or if you want to do things yourself, like we're pushing the limit. We're just instinctively developing. And in this process, we get our first teeth. We get our teeth coming in. We're not having to just drink. We get off the mother's milk and off the liquids, and we start chomping and eating and being able to eat different things. And again, that's a concern over what you can eat, what you can't eat, what's healthy, what's not, to grow up. All of these things are building foundations in your life, and it's this instinctive development. We don't know we're doing, we're just alive to do it.